Leica, probably the most highly regarded 35mm cameras made. Everybody loves the bayonet fitting rangefinder equipment. Fantastic cameras, fantastically made, really nice to use. Screw cameras, not quite so popular. They're not as easy to use, they're quite fiddly to use by modern standards, but still many people do use them, and if you're very interested in photographic history, that should absolutely be part of your collection. I'm going to run through very quickly the models available and also discuss what to look at if you're buying these secondhand. Okay, so a very quick overview. It all started in about 1918 with the Leica I. This is the Leica I. Two versions fundamentally exist. There's the version with the fixed lens, which has the very noticeable hockey stick there, which is actually an infinity stop for the lens. This was superseded quite quickly with the interchangeable lens version, which doesn't have that. You'll notice on the top it just has a viewfinder with the wind-on crank, shutter speed dial and rewind. This was replaced by the Leica II. The Leica II has a rangefinder. So obviously that made focusing a lot quicker, easier and more precise. This in turn was replaced by the Leica III, which has a slow speed dial. Now a number of variants exist of this. There's the 3, there's the 3A, 3B, 3C. 3C was launched at around the time of the Second World War. The 3C is quite notable because it has the one-piece top plate. So the 3B just had the rangefinder bolted on the top. The 3C, it's all one molded piece. So 3C then went on to the 3F. There was a 3D, but that's very rare. The 3F, which has flash synchronization around the shutter speed dial here, and also a flash sync socket on the back. And then finally the 3G, which was the first of the cameras with built-in bright line frames. The 3G in turn was replaced by the M3, the first of the M bayonet cameras. These, just in case you don't know, these are the screw fitting cameras, which all have a screw fitting. The M3 was the first of the cameras to have a bayonet fitting. Okay, so what do you need to look at if you're buying one of these secondhand? I mean, really, there are three things to consider. Look at the cosmetics, look at the optics, look at the mechanics. Now, bearing in mind that these cameras, now, the youngest 3G dates back to mid-1950s, so these are going to be, 65 years old at least. If you're looking at something like this, I mean, this is now just 100 years old. So, can you expect them to be perfect? Not really. It's unlikely to get one of these in absolutely perfect condition. And I have to say, if I found one in absolutely perfect condition as a dealer, I'll be very suspicious because it's so rare. And if you see these looking absolutely pristine, they've often been refurbished. So be a little bit careful with those. It can damage their value. Okay, so what you need to look at. First of all, look at the cosmetics. Just make sure it hasn't been badly dented. Look around the base plate. Look around the top plate. Just make sure there are no nasty dings, no nasty scratches. I mean, a few signs of use really are inevitable. Have a look at the lens. Just take the lens off. Again, just have a look around the filter rim. Have a look around the screw thread. Make sure it closes and opens if it's a collapsible lens, as it should. Just make sure it's in nice, clean condition. A few little marks, not a problem at all. If it's got a lot of dings or a lot of dents in it, I really would avoid, especially if you plan to get the camera serviced to use it. So first of all, make sure it's clean. I'll then look at the mechanics. Check out the shutter first of all. Just set it to 1 second. Fire it a few times on 1 second, and just see if it is firing as it should be. This camera, the slow speeds are sticking, which is very common. If you find they're sticking, they need a service. That can be quite expensive to get done. So if you're having the camera serviced, make sure that it's worthwhile doing. Again, if it's covered in dents and scratches, it probably isn't worth having, say, for example, a Leica 3C serviced, because it'll cost you maybe £200, perhaps $250 to get it serviced, and that really is the value of the camera. So be a little bit careful with with servicing costs. They are quite high because there are only a few people around that can do these to a high standard, and if you're going to have it serviced, you want it done to a high standard. So check out the shutter first of all, make sure it's clicking as it should be, make sure it's not sticking on the slow speeds, make sure it's opening on the higher speeds. Now a trick to check out the high speeds, you do need to be careful with this. If you take a business card of some sort and you take the base plate off the camera very carefully. Now if this makes you nervous, just don't do it. Very carefully slide a business card in there like that, and you can actually get the business card to sit behind the shutter. You can then fire the shutter and you can see the white light reflecting back at you from the business card. Just test it through the higher speeds, test it all up to a 500th, or if it's got a 1,000th of a second, check it to a 1,000th of a second, and just make sure that you can see the white of the business card at all points across the shutter gate. If you can only see it halfway through, that's a sign that the shutter is sticking, and again, it will need servicing. But as I say, with this, you do have to be very, very careful. I mean, there is a chance you'll damage the shutter. So as I said, if it makes you nervous, just don't do it. So check the shutter out. Then just look at the rangefinder if it has one, and look at the viewfinder and just make sure that the rangefinder is working. Push the little rangefinder coupling wheel there, and you'll see the rangefinder image do this. You want to make sure that it's aligning horizontally when it's focused and it's aligning vertically. If it's not aligning correctly at infinity, or if it's not aligning correctly vertically, then the rangefinder does need servicing. So have a look at that. Have a look at just general wear inside. Just make sure there's not too much wear inside when you've got the base plate off, and just make sure that the base plate does clip in and come off as it should. If they've been knocked, that can get very, very tight. Other functions you can check. I mean, obviously you should make sure it's winding on correctly, it's rewinding, but they tend to be very reliable in that respect. If you're going to see an issue with these, it's going to be the slow speeds or it's going to be the rangefinder. Once you're satisfied that mechanically it's okay, then just move on to the optics. With the lens, just open it up at full aperture, make sure it's nice and clean inside. I should also have said, with the mechanics, just make sure that the aperture is moving smoothly, make sure that the focusing is moving smoothly. Again, with this one, this is in need of a service. The focusing is actually quite tight. That's a sign that it needs a service, and the aperture mechanism also is quite tight, which is a sign it needs a service. But just look through, make sure the glass is clean. Look at the front, look at the back, make sure there are no scratches. Do keep an eye open for fungus. Fungus is very, very common with Leica equipment because often it's been stored for a long time in bad conditions. I'll put a link at the top going into more details about fungus, but do look very carefully into the lens to make sure there's no fungus. When you hold it up, you'll often see misting inside. That can be a coating deterioration, and it's almost inevitable with these older screw lenses. So really, if you're buying, you have to make a decision as to how much you're willing to accept. You're not likely to find one in absolutely perfect condition, and if you do, it's going to be a high price, quite justifiably. So when you look through, if you see a little bit of misting, that is quite normal. You know, it's up to you how much you decide to pay if the optics are slightly imperfect. So misting, not too much of a worry. Scratches, not too much of a worry, but be very, very careful about fungus. And as I said, check out the video on fungus. It'll go into much more detail. So check out the optics on the lens, check out the optics on the rangefinder. Just again look through and make sure that it's nice and clear inside, no misting. If you're looking at a 3G with the bright line frames, make sure they're bright and clear. Often the mirroring can start to break up and you lose the detail of the frame. And often with the rangefinder itself, just make sure that the two images are nice and bright, that there's mirroring inside the rangefinder mechanism. If that mirroring starts to break down, the second image you see, as you hold it up, so you can see the two images, the second image you can see becomes very, very dim. If it's very dim, that's a sign that the mirroring is beginning to fail inside. And that is almost impossible to get fixed for a sensible price. It can be done, but it's very, very expensive. And as I said, with the servicing, you'll get to a point where the cost of fixing this stuff is greater than the value of the camera. Some people are happy to proceed with that, then end up with a very nice, very workable, nice piece of history. But I'll be a little bit cautious. Particularly if you're having a lot of work carried out on a fairly tatty camera. Worthwhile doing it on a really lovely camera, not so if the camera's a bit marked. Okay, so you've checked out the cosmetics, you've checked out it's nice cosmetically, you've checked out the mechanics and it's working well, and you've checked out the optics, it's nice and clean. In that situation, go for the camera. Just check on eBay, you can see what these things sell for. If the price is sensible, then go for it. I hope that's been useful. If you have any comments, please stick them in the box below. Otherwise, please subscribe and like, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.